Aloha, folks, and welcome to today's Eighth House Anecdote. Today's story is going to be about Mr. and Mrs. Curry, and they are going to help us explore other dimensions a little bit more. Mr. Curry came to America with less than $30 in his pocket, and somehow he managed to earn and save enough to start his own restaurant. Yes, now you know why his name is Mr. Curry, and now you know what I'm having for dinner. So yeah, he came to America, dirt poor, started his own business, and over the course of his lifetime, with the support of his wife, they were able to amass $1 million. And so this is where our story begins. Shortly after they made their goal, Mrs. Curry's cancer started to come back and she began to go into decline. So Mr. and Mrs. Curry wanted to come into the office to find out how they had settled or how they had last left their final affairs on their trust and will. And the way that they had it was they had two kids. They had a son and a daughter, and each of those kids had grandkids. So the way that the trust and will read was as follows. The daughter only was in charge of everything, and only the daughter's kids were the beneficiaries. All the money was to go to only the daughter's kids. No mention of the son, no mention of the son's kids. So Mrs. Curry wasn't pleased with that anymore. This is another thing that's relatively common when people are nearing the end of their life, is that they begin to seek amends with people that they had disputes with, especially when they're family members. So that's exactly what they did. They changed their trust and their will. They changed it so that both the son and daughter were in charge, and all the grandkids from both the son and the daughter would receive the inheritance money in equal shares. So logically, that sounds fair. Both kids in charge to make sure that all the money goes to all the grandkids equally. Seems fair. But what is fairness? And why am I talking about other dimensions? So not long after this changeover, Mrs. Curry died. And based on the events, I suspect Mr. Curry told his daughter about the changes that had been made. Now, there's something that I haven't explained yet. And again, Mr. and Mrs. Curry, their estate was worth $1 million. But what needs to be understood as to why the daughter and son were being skipped, why was the money going to the grandkids? Well, the reason why is because the son and daughter were each earning 8 figures annually as premier doctors in their field. I'm serious. The son and daughter were each earning 8 figures, and they're both doctors. So other dimensions. Well, people get nasty. People get nasty when people die. And I have a glimpse of what might have been involved. It sounds like there was a lot of pressure from the parents for the kids to perform well. And that's not uncommon when you have people who are from, who come from a state of poverty and are able to amass some degree of wealth. They don't want their children to ever have to experience the level of poverty that they came from. So there's a lot of pressure to perform academically. And that's what those kids definitely experienced going through doctorate school. The son, the one that was originally being written out, I suspect he was under an extraordinarily high amount of pressure, different than his sister. I don't know all the pressure that she experienced. I just know it was different because, yes, they were both put into doctorate school. However, the son was also put into the military and served for 6 years on behest of his father. So it sounds to me like there was probably a lot of unaddressed angst. And that's probably what Mrs. Curry wanted to begin to address. And, and she just left all that fallout when she passed. Because shortly after she passed, Mr. Curry came back into the office to change his will and his trust again. Obviously, this time he was alone. This time he changed it so that the daughter got everything. The daughter was in charge of everything and she got everything. So originally, daughter in charge, money goes to her kids. And then it was changed, daughter and son equally in charge, to give it to all of the grandkids equally. And now all of a sudden, now that mom's gone, now it is daughter's in charge of giving everything to herself. That was a really interesting occurrence. And we were rather taken aback by the request, just because things were happening relatively quickly, and it was very obvious that Mr. Curry was emotional. However, those are his documents, so we just signed off as witnesses and let him manage his affairs the way that he saw fit. And of course, not too long after, Mr. Curry passed away. And we had met his daughter before. A lot of our clients would introduce us to their children because they wanted the kids to know who they would be dealing with. You know, if mom and dad die and the kids need the money, who are they going to call? Well, at the time it was me. So Mr. and Mrs. Curry wanted the daughter to meet me so that she would be familiar with who was going to be on the other line, who's going to be on the other end of that phone call. So now that they've both passed, all I can say is it was like a whole other dimension of the daughter's personality. And she fought tooth and nail because the son fought tooth and nail. There was a dispute over that final amendment, the one changing everything to the daughter. And that's as far as I can go. I cannot go any further with this story because the part of the daughter's personality that came out of that other dimension, that part was so nasty that we refused to assist her. I mean, you just cannot give a hug to something that thorny without poking your own eye out. So that's not a warning. It's not a precaution. It's just a reminder. It's just a reminder that when we don't take care of trauma that we've experienced over the course of our lifetime, that doesn't mean that it won't come out. It came out. And it came out at what would appear to be the worst time. Basically, this lady's mom died, and because of it, she turned into a bitch. I want to make it clear that I understand that she had given her father excess money, and so I could see why she would be upset. That was her money. She gave it back to her dad, and now her dad is giving it to her mom, and dad are giving it to her brother's kids. I could see her wanting that money to go to her kids. However, we were just the witnesses. We were just the middlemen. When you treat the middleman like shit, we hang up the phone on you. I guess that's a good way to end this. Just be aware, I guess is the lesson of this story, is to just be aware that people will get nasty. People will get ultra materialistic after you pass. So maybe let's talk about those hurtful things. I wonder I wonder how things might have gone differently if people were ready to talk about the traumas that they experienced when they were younger, because it comes out. The hurt will come out. I just don't like it when it's directed at me, when I'm just here to help.